Hello everyone. In today's video, we're going to go over how you can take information that's been input on one page of workflow and use it in subsequent pages of the same workflow. And this is important because you are only allowed to use a single unique variable for each of the different blocks. So that means that you can't use client full name here and as their role as the plaintiff or defendant, for example. So you need to kind of cleverly use a combination of things like invisible logic as well as default values to kind of make this how you would like. So for example, if the client is also the plaintiff, then you can have this information pre-populated rather than having to put this information here and there. But also you can change it using some invisible logic on the back end to say that she's actually the defendant in this case, and instead of having it be here as a default value, it's actually here, and this is blank. If in your particular case your client is always the plaintiff because you always have your client be the person who's the plaintiff, then what you would do is just simply go over to the party's information, go into settings, and as the default value, use a configuration of a $, a curly bracket, the it says client full name. You would just put client full name here and then close this out with another curly bracket. Now, if though sometimes your client is the plaintiff and sometimes your client is the defendant in a case, then what you could do is create two invisible logic pages. The first one, well, firstly, let's go back and go over how this particular workflow is set up just generally. So on this particular one, I have two pages. I have a client's information and then I have party's information. And on the client's information page, I have a question asking what the client's full name is. And then I also have a question whether the client is the plaintiff or the defendant in the case so that I can attach logic to this. So I have the choices as plaintiff and defendant. Right? And so after that, I have an invisible logic page that is the scenario where the role is the plaintiff. So I've created a text variable where I've called it client role is plaintiff. And I've added some logic that says, if client, plaintiff, or defendant is the answer plaintiff, then I want the variable that I created here, client role is plaintiff, to equal the client's full name. Otherwise, or in all other options, client role is plaintiff is blank. So you just keep this blank. We have another invisible logic page here now for when the role is the defendant. So client role is defendant is a text variable that we've created. And I'm just adding some logic that says client, plaintiff, or defendant. If that's answered defendant instead, then this one, client role is defendant, will equal client full name. However, in all other circumstances, I want this to be blank. So the final piece here then would be that we, on our party's information page, go into our settings for each question, which is asking who is the plaintiff in this case. And we just put in the default value of $, curly bracket, and then the variable client role is plaintiff for the plaintiff question, and then close it out with a curly bracket. And for the one that says who is the defendant in this case, you would go into settings and you would say client role is defendant with that same configuration of a $, an open curly bracket, and a closing curly bracket. So what we've done here is added some logic around default values. So when this is run, we can have that kind of scenario where if I say Brittany Hernandez is the client and I'm the plaintiff in this case, then when I continue, the plaintiff will be pre-populated with this default value and the default defendant will be blank because our invisible logic says that it should be blank. So this needs to be filled out. So it's required. So we can put the, let's say, John Doe in this scenario as that person. And then you could go on and have other questions that help you to prepare a pleading, for example, or any other type of documents, and go have them generated here at the end. So that is how you can kind of go through this process and kind of get around the fact that you need unique variables for each particular block, but also add some conditions around default values. So I hope that was useful, and I'll see you in the next video.